Our age demographics are pretty good.
We're young.
Yeah, that's good.
Afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to call to order the Economic Development Corporation meeting for the City of White House, Texas. It's September 19th. The time is 12:04. Susan, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Bob Breedlove.
Here.
Charles Parker.
Here.
Ernie LaFleur.
Here.
John Chambers. Maria Davenport.
Here.
Tom Trimble. And Jerry Akins. We have a quorum.
Awesome. Item B is the consent agenda, approval of minutes from the EDC meeting of August 15th, 2024. I didn't see anything that needed to be amended. Anybody else?
I reviewed it and I propose we accept the minutes as presented.
I
Motion on the
second.
floor, second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any unopposed or any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Item C, presentations. I don't guess we have any.
Yes, sir.
Item D is a public forum. We don't have anybody here that's signed in.
Yes, sir.
Item E is the agenda items. Number 1, discussion of retail recruitment and the retail coach.
Yes, sir. I'm happy to say that the retail coach has been very busy on our behalf. They've completed the retail demand outlook analysis, and a copy of that was given to you today. They've also completed an initial market analysis report, and now that they've got that completed, they are finalizing the build-out of our White House Retail Dashboard website. That is set to launch next week. That platform will serve as a comprehensive resource for retailers, brokers, and developers who are seeking information on White House. That can be added into our website, our current one, and or our current page on the city website, and also onto our newly being developed website for the EDC itself. Or it can serve as, it can be a standalone site on its own if we need that. Retail Coach is also completing a list of initial retail targets for us. They are stepping up will be stepping up their recruitment efforts next week now that those targets have been identified. They'll be sharing that list with staff for our review in the next few days. They have put together a press release for us, and Leslie has done a piece with CBS 19, and that will be airing, let's see, what did that say, next week, I believe? No, this week. So that should be enhancing our visibility to regional brokers and developers, and looking forward to seeing that. At Retail Live in Austin, they connected with several potential retailers for us and restaurants. There were 3 different limited quick serve restaurants that shown interest, and they are working with each one of those. During our first project call with them, we also discussed various sites that we have around town, some that had available spaces. There's one in particular that we pointed out where there had been a store, the store had moved out, so they reached out to that retailer who has the lease to see what they thought would be happening, and they are looking to sublease that space. So they're working with that retailer to get that space subleased.
It was really nice. They were able to track down that information within a few hours,
yes.
and it would have taken us days to get to the right person to figure out
find out who
what the
that
plan was
was.
for that space.
Yeah, so they have been very, very busy. I'm very happy with their work so far. We'll be starting to set up our weekly calls. We're trying to get one set up for next week, and they'll just kind of be what I'm calling, I know I keep saying initial, it's our first initial, like, this is what we're doing call. And then we'll have weekly calls or bi-weekly calls with them after that.
And they should be setting up, at our next meeting, we should be looking at dates for them to do site visits in our community so we can start identifying some potential properties that they can help us market specifically for those properties. So both for development and redevelopment.
Yes.
Awesome.
Well, it sounds like you're very pleased with them so far.
So far.
Sounds like they're moving fast.
Great.
They do not let any grass grow under them, I can tell you that.
Yeah, they do not.
Well, that's what you like to see for
Yeah.
sure.
Okay.
So if you want to talk a little bit about this retail trade area that they've identified here, as you can see, you know, they've primarily focused on areas to our southeast that, as part of our retail trade area, with a population of about 58 or 57,000 people, with a high average household income. So they seem to think will be very marketable to retailers and restaurants, so it's exciting.
You know, one thing and this is, you may or may not know the answer, it just interested me, how they project the growth between 2024 and 2029 on the various categories, the growth rates they come up with. It's all plus or minus 3%.
I don't know if they're using maybe statewide trends, or I don't know what they
Yeah.
base that off of.
It's
Yeah.
very conservative.
Yeah, it strikes me as very conservative.
Do you have that?
I've been looking over his shoulder.
Oh,
You,
I wasn't sure where one was gonna sit, so they just kind of.
yeah, it's very interesting, and what specific categories they broke down into, it's fascinating.
yeah, a lot of detail.
And luggage and leather goods, huh?
Yeah.
I'll be interested to hear from them later, either this week or early next week, what specific NAICS codes they think we should target, for coming here.
Sounds like they picked the right people.
This is just on the edge of our, retail trade area, but I'm really curious what kind of impact this Bass Pro Shop, action right there at 49 is gonna have. That would seem like that's gonna be, could be fairly significant. We're on the edge of it.
I don't know, as I look at this, I see White House on the front edge of their map, more or less, and, you know,
Is that more like the school district map, or how do they draw that map?
I bet they used, cell phone data.
yeah.
So they track cell phone data to see where people are going
Oh.
and coming from, where they're shopping, where they're stopping, how long they're spending there.
And I think one of the things that'll help us in the future is when, 346 is widened all the way.
Oh, yeah.
Coming across, and then when you combine that with the expansion of Biloxi, and then eventually Rome's Quarter too, and, you know, you've got some more east-west as well as north-south expansion coming. So I think that's ultimately going to, I don't think it's gonna hurt White House.
No, certainly true.
It'll make it easier to get in and out of town, but I don't know that it hurts us. I don't think it's like a loop where, you know, you suddenly lose,
Right.
you know.
No, I think it just makes it more attractive for housing development
Yeah,
to the south. The easier it is to get into Tyler.
yep. And so if we can grow our retail here, we'll pull in all those people, we won't have to put up our own toll. All right, any other questions on this? I like the direction so far.
Yeah.
Hearing none, I'm gonna go to item 2, which is the update on the EDC website.
I just have just one or two things to let you know about. They are still working on this. We've gone over some of the updates that we talked about last time. They're implementing those. But today, they sent their photographer out, and we had her take some pictures for us that we'll be able to put on the website. So that's really the biggest update I have for you all. She was just here a few minutes ago.
She was in the parking lot.
She was in the
taking
parking lot,
pictures.
yeah. And so, we had brought that list over with me. I had about 10 to 15, sites that we were wanting for those, pictures to be taken. Let me see if I can get that email pulled up. Sorry, I thought I brought it with me. Apparently I did not. Apologize, I thought I had it right here. I know the rec was going to allow for some pictures to be taken both inside and outside. We were hoping to get some pictures of people working out. I reached out to Taco Bell, and they were amenable to letting us take pictures inside and out, and possibly getting like a picture of a transaction. That was Leslie's suggestion for us. I asked for pictures of the main city park, active commercial sites, and gave her the suggestion of 109 East Main, active residential work sites, and gave her a couple of places where she might be able to get that as well. We wanted pictures of the Four Corners, the Veterans Memorial. I had wanted the Welcome to White House sign, but it's still being repaired, so we can't get that. Hopefully she went over to Jasper Ventures. I was trying to reach out to them to make sure it was okay, but it was just outside pictures, so hopefully there wasn't an issue there. The water tower, the library, and I think that was all of our suggestions for her.
Okay.
What about, well, I guess we can't, I was thinking Lake Tyler, but, you're like, but that's not really White House per se, even though it's pretty important.
Yeah, no,
Well, but we're the Economic Development Board, not the city, technically, so.
I mean, that's just a big recreation
Right.
hub right on that, right in our
It is a
region.
quality of life thing.
right.
It's a quality of life issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you there. So I don't think that would necessarily preclude us from,
Some photos there.
Yeah.
Let people know you're right near a lake kind of community, that's always attractive.
because one of the things you're trying to do, especially if you're attracting primary employers, is show what everything available around you,
Yeah.
and not necessarily, the Welcome to White House sign
Right.
exclusively, oh, well, there's a lake, there's boats, there's fishing, there's
Yeah.
things to do, so. And that's outside of the school itself. I would think one of the reasons that people like it here is it's a fairly attractive community, and you do have the lake,
The lake and growing parks.
growing parks and different things, and so that makes it family friendly.
Yeah.
So, anyway, this is my observation. Good work. All right, item 3, discussion of meeting with specialized public finance.
All right, so in front of you, I put an analysis from Specialized Public Finance on your borrowing capacity. It's been a little while since I've looked at it, so I'm a little rusty on it, but they took a look at what you all could do as far as revenue bonds, if you wanted to use that to purchase land going forward. So page number 13, because I had them run several different analyses. This is the part that's applicable to EDC. You can see what a 10-year or 15-year revenue bond issuance would look like, and then they've run some analysis on the following pages. And they took our current fiscal year 2025 budget and operating expenses and subtracted that out to see what the net available would be for that debt service. I do think based on this analysis, we may not be quite ready yet to issue revenue bonds. It's a little tighter than I would like for it to be, based on that analysis, especially given that we are sales tax funded entirely. And so while we think we've had some strong growth over the last couple of years, we're starting to see that slow down a little bit, and I just wanna make sure that we're being conservative when we start looking at that. I do think we're in a position that if something comes available, we at least know what that looks like now and would try to move pretty quickly. I know that's the overall direction of some of the properties that we've discussed in the past come available. I think we should have that discussion pretty quickly. But my recommendation right now would be to hold off.
Especially given that, you know, interest rates are starting to drop and we could be going into a cycle of decreasing interest rates. That makes a lot of sense to me to pause.
And this was run before, obviously, what the Fed did yesterday,
Yeah.
so.
But it looks like we needed $500,000 or something in that neighborhood, $250,000 to $750,000.
Yeah.
It's potentially achievable.
Yes,
at some
yeah.
point.
Well, in the meantime, we can, continue to let our fund balance grow. And, you know, we're not prohibited from taking advantage of smaller opportunities. It's just, you know, if you were talking about, you know, buying a business park or something like that, you know, there's probably not enough in there to do that. But there is enough in the other areas to where, you know, some smaller projects or smaller opportunities came up. I mean, wouldn't say no to it, but I think we just have to be a little careful. You know, if we had the full half cent, we could do more, but I think overall, when you consider our budget, what we've grown it to, you know, you look at the fact that we now do have financing capacity, and we really didn't before. And then you consider the other partnerships and things, the retail coach and whatever else. I think we're overall still moving in the right direction, and we're not precluded from doing something, but we just have to be careful. Anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else? Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, no, that's very helpful. That's good to know.
I
Okay.
thought the last slide was particularly interesting, talking about the history of municipal interest rates and how
Yeah.
long they've been higher than what they are right now.
Yeah.
I know they're still wildly popular with investors, you know, because of the tax-free accumulation feature that goes with municipal obligations. And so, anyway, well, they went all the way back to 1961 with that, didn't they? I just now caught that. Wow.
A long way.
Okay. Anything else?
I'm sure they've had to answer that question quite a bit here lately about interest rates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's not go back to 1980s, early 1980s again. That's all. I don't want to ever see that.
Nope.
Now, that was back when I think a mortgage was 20, 21. Maria, you know more about that.
That's right when I was buying my first house. Believe me, I remember.
I want to say I paid 8.5 on my first one.
I think my first one was 11.5%.
Glad to get it.
Yeah,
And I was glad to get it.
yeah, and rates had just dropped like a point
But then again,
the day before.
the houses weren't nearly as expensive either.
No,
I mean, gee, the first, I think our first house was 65,000.
oh wow. That would have been rich. I paid 28. All right, moving on. Item E4 is discussion, consideration, and action on commercial real estate consultant.
I do not have an update for you all on this. If you'll remember, we kind of discussed it in our last meeting, and Susan and I kind of mentioned we'd like to work on a scope. I think my recommendation at this point, I'd like to see what the retail coach is gonna do for us. I'd like to give them a little bit of time, and see what they do as far as marketing some of these sites that we have available. Susan and I can still work on developing that scope, so that when we get ready for it, to look at our interest maybe on her property that we as an EDC want to look at purchasing maybe in the future, what would be strategic for us. But as far as maybe properties along 110, those that we know are gonna be attractive to retailers and restaurants, I'd kinda like to see what the retail coach is gonna put together before we move too far down that path with a separate commercial development consultant. That's just my recommendation. We'll do however no one would like us to.
No, that makes great sense.
Well, you know, we hired one consultant.
Yeah.
Let's get that one off and going
Thank you.
before, you know, it would be my thought as well. And tying back in with, you know, item 3 on the agenda, as we know, with specialized financing, you know, I would think that if you're looking for a commercial consultant, then you're primarily interested in acquiring property. And if you don't have the finances to be able to do that, really, to the level that really is meaningful, then you probably ought to walk before you run. So maybe we get some more retail in here and get more revenue coming in that way, and then we can build up to it on the other side of it.
I think that, and I think we've got a little bit more revenue coming in. I'd be really curious, and this may be a good question for the retail coach as well, is what he thinks might be successful on this corner across the street right here. If that's something that, you know, in the future, maybe the EDC wanted to take on from the city and develop that for some sort of retail or restaurant purpose. I'd be really curious to hear from the retail coach what he thinks would work right there. But I think, to your point, we've already got one consultant. Let's see what we can get out of them on that front.
Yeah.
Before we go hire another one. So.
Yeah.
Does retail coach have any data on hotels?
They do.
Is it- I
They
didn't see
do
it.
hospitality stuff, but we haven't delved into that just
part
too
yet.
far yet. But I do want to talk to you about that maybe in the future.
Yeah,
That discussion has come back up recently.
Good.
So.
good. But you know, of course, during COVID and all during that time, you know, banks weren't really interested in supporting very much in the hospitality growth industry, and now then I think that's finally circling back around again, so it would seem like it would be a good time for it to resurrect.
Property has new owners, and so we have been having some preliminary discussions with them, so.
And I do have some questions on that, you know, as far as taxation goes on that in the future, but we can, that's down the road.
Okay.
And I don't wanna get off topic and get myself in trouble here.
How big a property is there at that point?
Right here, it's about 2 acres, but there's a drainage creek that runs through it, and so it's about an acre and a half developable, and it would take some some drainage infrastructure to make the back part of it accessible for parking or something.
Yeah, it's potentially a pretty attractive site. Especially once you got the big new community center going and there's some momentum to this being, you know, kind of a new city center.
Yep.
Okay. What else have y'all thought? Anything, other thoughts on a consultant? I- One of the reasons I think we were going down this pathway, just to kind of revisit the why, was there was a developer here who I think he's kind of stranded in trying to figure out what he wants to do with the remaining commercial piece of his property. And I think at this point in time, I think it would be really hard for us to consider doing anything with that. And I would prefer to defer that to the retail coach and let them decide. And then if there's some kind of a recommendation or something, we could move forward. But I think trying to do that on our own with our limited finances is probably beyond the scope. So that, just to kind of refresh everybody's memory of how we got here, you know, so anyway.
We don't always have to be the one out there being the developer. We can always be the go-between to put the developer with
Right.
the user.
Right,
Okay.
Yep.
yeah, and putting people together is,
My preference.
yeah, I think that's everybody's preference right now.
Yeah, that's a key part of our role.
Exactly. So, yeah, all right. Item 5, discussion of growth and additional revenue opportunities. And that was something John had requested, on here. And so, you know, I would really value his input onto this subject. I think he has some great ideas, but I don't want to speak for him. You know, I have my own ideas on different growth potential, but I don't know. I'll just start by saying that, as y'all all know, the Tyler EDC is primarily, well, it's totally funded by memberships. And they don't even use the half-cent sales tax for that. And I think there is potential for us to operate on a duality method with that. Maybe not now, but in the future. And I think, we probably should put together some kind of a strategic plan of how that would look and what the fee structure would look like and everything. I know that the chamber here has expanded tremendously on their membership efforts, and it would be nice to see, that partnership between the chamber and the EDC on some membership levels and things like that be able to grow as well. And that could be your additional source of revenue, to where, you're not necessarily totally dependent on that, percentage of the half-cent sales tax that we get. And it gives us more leverage to do the different things that we'd like to do. But if you're gonna make that sale, you're going to have to be able to show what your ideas are and where you're gonna go with it and how that's going to benefit those that are giving, or joining the team, if you will.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can't just go ask people for money and not show what's in them for them.
Yeah.
So that's where our retail coach comes in to some degree with, potentially down the road. I think it's a good ongoing discussion item, but, and then the other side of generating revenue, I mean, there's 2 points, and the other is you go out and you buy something, a piece of property or whatever, and then you lease that property.
Right.
Or whatever, and then you get the revenue coming on off of that as well. And there's multiple combinations off of those kind of things. And the idea being, again, we're a nonprofit, is you're constantly looking for the bigger, better opportunities and trying to make sure that each of your commercial properties in the city are hitting that real estate acumen of highest and best use, right? So, that's the idea behind the whole growth. And so, but how does that benefit, the mechanic on the corner that, you would sign up as a member? Or how does that affect Brookshire's or whatever? Why would they join us because they're already a member of Tyler? So these are some things that I think would take some identification before you went down that road for a membership drive. And, but I think it's something worthy of consideration. And then going back to the retail coach, I think as properties specifically are identified, we grow our budget, we do different things, then there's the potential for the lease opportunities and things that go with that. And so it's a matter of putting the puzzle together kind of a piece at a time, but you don't necessarily know what the shape of that particular piece is. That's from my point of view. Does anyone ever have any other thoughts that go with that, or does my rambling diatribe make any sense as far as the overall picture of where I see us now and where I see us potentially going?
I follow you.
Your ramblings are great.
Yeah, I think the two paths you talk about are the most likely, the membership and then the leasing property. What I don't know is if new developers are coming in and proposing subdivisions, could there be a piece that would be set aside for retail or commercial development for those subdivisions that then we could have a role in, that, okay, the EDC wants to take, hopefully at an attractive price, this area that could be a strip development or something associated with a new subdivision. That's something like that.
Well, again,
Just a different leasing option.
right, and under the current zoning, unless there's been some major change that I'm not aware of, but a developer can come in under plan development. And what that basically does is that creates a mixed use, where you have the residential, you have maybe some high density housing, apartments, condos, whatever, and then you can have some retail up front with that. And, being able to buy in, I think most developers would probably consider that.
Yeah.
And I think in any case, what you want to prevent is, them necessarily taking the front of their development and saying commercial is storage units.
Oh, yeah.
So you gotta, you kind of gotta balance that out a little bit, and so, having some input into it, I think would be key. And, it might be a situation where, in the future, perhaps we need to meet with the planning and zoning board and have some conversations with them about that, to look at what direction, because, again, I haven't followed what they're up to or anything in a long time, but, I know that they do a very good job over there, and I kind of defer, when I was mayor, I deferred to them regularly.
So one of the things we do now that may give you some peace of mind on that is we do a pre-development meeting, usually at least Susan and I, will include other departments if necessary, to take a look at any plans or just do a very preliminary discussions when somebody's wanting to come in and develop a property. And we're always looking at it from an economic development perspective as well, particularly if it's front row access on 110 or 346 and saying, well, you could do this or you could do that. You can't do storage buildings. We're not gonna.
Yeah.
No storage buildings. Those types of things. So we are doing more of that on the pre-development side, at the staff level as well, to make sure we get those points in there, not necessarily about leasing property or things for the EDC, but opportunities. But I think if we have residential developers coming in now that have particularly valuable road frontage and may not have the expertise in commercial development, usually they're kind of separate, we can start taking a harder look and keep that in mind as we start those pre-development meetings.
I mean, it could be a win-win thing. They may not want to devote their time and attention to that, whereas we might have a different view of what might be appropriate and be willing to take a little bit longer-term view and what's best for the city that the developer
Right.
may not have much attention or focus on, so,
Okay.
yeah, anyway. Could be an opportunity.
And I think to your point on the future of memberships, I definitely think that's something that needs to wait at least until you have a full-time staff person to kind of flesh that out and be seeking out those memberships. Because if we were to try to start that right now, I have no idea how that would happen. So,
Well, again, I think you would need to,
gotta have some.
I think
show.
you would need to actually put a plan together, a marketing plan.
Agreed.
And figure out who your target was, and, there's a lot of work that you're gonna have to do up front, all of us have to do up front, before you can, we're open for donations,
Okay.
okay.
So we will have some challenges that with just having significantly less corporate presence in our city limits will make that a little bit more difficult than, say, Tyler.
Yeah.
Some of those kind of things will definitely be challenges. I think it's doable, just agreed, you need to have a really strong plan and goal in mind.
Okay. All right, anything else? Consider future agenda items. Ongoing with the retail coach, ongoing with the website. I think we can, hold back anything on finance for a while.
Are we getting new development proposals? Or is that kind of slowed down?
We really haven't seen anything on the residential side. We've got some that have been in planning for about a year, starting to move forward and clearing. Park Meadows in particular is starting some progress on the ground. I've heard they're doing some grading and clearing maybe. But as far as new applications, I haven't seen anything.
Well, in the doldrums, yeah. Hopefully that'll improve as interest rates get better.
Yeah,
Where's Park Meadows?
it's the Conaway.
Oh.
346.
I got a call from somebody, I couldn't remember who, trying to coordinate. The other Meadow Lake, Meadow.
Park Meadows
Meadows.
and Madison
Madison
Village.
Village. They kind of tie together over Union Bridge, right?
Yeah, the stub outs will tie together.
Is that probably what will happen on Memory Lane that's for sale out there behind the cemetery? 27 acres.
I don't know.
And those are 27 acres for sale.
Runs right down to the south side of the cemetery and then back behind the cemetery.
There's 27 acres there? Find out.
I don't know if that's zone retail or if it's,
It'll be residential.
single family.
Most likely.
Okay. What else?
Is that big park plan, gonna have any space in it that's set aside for any kind of other development other than just the park?
So I know we've talked about that a couple of times. I am in the process right now of scoping out what that concept plan contract is gonna look like with our engineer. So I think that's something during that planning process we could look at, but there is a parcel, not necessarily in the part that the city already purchased, but I'm wondering if there's a parcel adjacent to it.
See, those are the kind of things that could, would be a good goal for us.
I worry about access
Yeah.
to that, but it's something I wanna run by, the planner that we're working with on the parks plan. I just haven't made it that far yet.
No, that's fine, that's fine, just curious.
Okay, anything else?
I would like to have an executive session at your next meeting to talk about the future executive director position for you all.
Okay.
When is our next meeting? October?
Yeah, when is that?
17th?
Yes.
17th, yes.
I'm not gonna be here.
I won't either.
Well,
Maybe push it, can't do it next Thursday either.
I'm trying November 14th.
When?
November 14th?
November?
Too close to.
Yeah, I'm gonna be out of town.
I'm
I'm never anywhere except those 2 days.
The 21st is our regular November meeting.
Okay. Yeah,
Oh.
that'd be good.
I will not be here on the 14th, I don't think.
Oh, okay, that's right. So 21st, we'll just.
I'm
put it
out
on-
the 21st as well.
Does that work for everybody else?
The
You want us to
21st?
reschedule, or, yeah?
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay, I can talk to you what I want to talk to you about before.
Okay.
21st is good for me.
I think I can do that, that's,
Okay, so we'll skip
being
an
on top
October,
of Thanksgiving, it's,
skip an October meeting,
Right.
that'll be good, cause Susan and I will be out of town the week before.
My company decided to have a sales retreat.
so what is the October meeting,
It's a sales retreat.
or are we skipping October?
We're
I
gonna
don't know,
skip
it's a
the
waste of
October
time.
meeting, which
Go-
is supposed
go
to be
sell
the
more.
17th, we're gonna skip that
So we'll go for the 21st.
in November.
I don't understand why
I'll
you
do the
don't.
28th if you'll bring the turkey.
You're on your own.
Okay. Gotta be in College Station on the 30th,
Yeah, that's kind of a big deal, isn't it?
kind of a big deal. Just gotta win 1 game a year, that's it.
Okay.
All right.
Are we good? Last item, receive reports from staff.
Susan, can you turn on this too?
Anything that needs to be brought up regarding that?
I'm gonna show you this sales tax trend report. We finished the year just 0.5% lower than the prior year, so that's pretty good. Depending, when I was looking at numbers from June, July, and August, I was a little bit nervous, but it came back in. We finished $10,000 lower in total sales tax collections than the prior year. So given that we've had a couple of years of exponential sales tax growth, that's not too bad. Always like it when it goes up instead of down, but
Now the economy is kind of slowing down.
let's see if I can see that. And if we hadn't had that, if we hadn't had that rebate back in
Yeah.
May, I guess.
Yeah.
um, We would have finished the year ahead, so, so net, we didn't have any growth, but I think we did have sales tax growth. It was just because that rebate happened to fall in this year.
I would really just consider us kind of flat more than anything else, but, compared to a lot of places, I think that's
It's good.
Zero is your hero.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's all I had to share on that. Just wanted to let you know we're kind of where we finished the year. I will say from the city side, we were able to maintain the current tax rate, which is still at right around 71 cents. We do have an item on the agenda for the council to consider raising slightly our water and wastewater rates. After we adopted our city budget, we got a notice from City of Tyler about their increase at 16% that they were passing on to us. So,
That means it's going to me too.
It's pretty strong.
the council hasn't seen it yet, but what staff is proposing is that we raise our water rates on some of the tiered charges, keep our minimum rate the same, but slightly raise the higher volume charges, because we feel like that's typically, not always, but typically more discretionary use, and not impact our minimum bill on the water side. So that's what we'll be proposing on Tuesday. But again, zero is kind of your hero. What we can keep flat, we are, so we're doing okay there.
I didn't realize they were going up that much. I know they've been selling a lot of bonds.
16%.
Jeez.
And I think we got the notification on August 16th and adopted our budget on August 20th. That was great.
Looks like White House is fixing North Tyler.
Yeah. There's an whole city.
Fortunately, our wells are in great shape and we're not having to use just a whole lot of Tyler water, but it does impact our minimum, kind of take or pay calculation.
Was that a 20-year contract?
It's 25.
25? Halfway into it, probably.
Yeah. Signed it in 8 or 9. I think it was 2008. So, yeah. It's either that or drill some more wells. Those aren't cheap either.
Man, they are not right now.
How deep are our wells here? 700 feet or something like that?
I don't know, Bob had
Yeah,
it
probably
ready.
something.
Yeah.
We just drilled a well for the city of Rusk. Good well, but I think it's $1 million.
It was how much?
$1 million.
$1 million?
Wow.
To make
For a water well?
Just a pump
It's
or a
pretty good.
motor is $120,000
Yeah.
just to have it replaced. So,
Those pumps aren't cheap either. All right. If there's not anything else, then it is 12:52 and we are adjourned.
I've got a well down into the Carrizo Wilcox, did that for my place,
Oh, do you?
and, same